Yeah, no, just I think having been there sort of 2 years as a player, my heart went out to them this week. It was tragic circumstances, a tragic story. I've spoken to a lot of players that have played there. Said what a great guy, great guy their owner and chairman was. And I just hope that, I think it puts everything into perspective really. I think the fact that Leicester gave everybody hope by winning the Premier League was an incredible achievement, and just my heart goes out to all those people that support the club and it's affected by it. So I wish them I wish them well, and I think everybody will be looking out for Leicester's results certainly in the future.
On to happier circumstances then. We've got 4 points out of the last 6 with our 2 away games. Confidence should be better, but you've already mentioned we need consistency going into this home match.
Yeah, I think we've started to show. I think if you look over the last 10 games, I think we've started to show a lot more consistency. Of course, there's the odd game in there where we've perhaps not got the right result, but I certainly think of how we're playing and the way we're trying to play, and of course we've still got lots of things we want to improve. The speed of our attacking, the amount of chances that we create alongside our sort of improved defensive performances. But I certainly think in the last week we've shown, like we did at Norwich, we've shown a side to our game that you need in the Championship, a side to our game that you need to win games away from home. I think if you look at the first half against Bristol, we played really, really well in the first half. Second half, we've defended too deep. That wasn't the plan, but we've done it. Sometimes when you've got something to protect, it's easier to step backwards rather than forwards. And along with a good defensive performance and Jack's performance, we managed to get a fantastic 3 points. So yes, it does give us confidence. But as we know, the type of game coming up Saturday is the type of game that we know is always going to be difficult. A team at home that are very, very resolute defensively, that don't give a lot of space away, that put the emphasis on you really at times to go and break them down. And so we have to show a little bit more attacking verve in order to do that. I thought against Birmingham we got into some good positions. We perhaps just didn't get there quickly enough and often enough. So and I appreciate that. Possession's one thing, but we don't want possession just to be possession. We want it to be chances and opportunities on goal and goals scored. So I think there's a big emphasis as well on our attacking players really to just to be a little more clinical in front of goal, because we have created some chances, and maybe just that little bit of clinical nature about our attacking is going to help us certainly Saturday.
We've had a whole week, which is unusual. No midweek games. So how has that helped with your preparation?
Oh, it's been lovely. It's been something that something that you always crave as a manager. Of course here we've had that period pre-season, but as we know, pre-season was a very difficult period here anyway. So you don't feel as though you've really had the chance to build what you've really wanted to build in that period. So, and I think we've only had a couple of weeks where we've not had a midweek game or international break, and because we've got so many internationals, of course, none of them are here very much up until the last day before the game. So preparation has been quite sporadic, I would say. A week like this has been great because you can get to work right from the first day. We changed our week slightly in terms of the way we work, but we've had 2 or 3 really, really good days in which we can try to hone some of those little bits, some of that little bit of attacking, some of that bit of finishing, spend a bit more time with the players on that. So I think every manager will say the same. When you get a free week, it's certainly more than helpful.
And on to Middlesbrough, you clearly know how they play. Most Stoke fans will have feelings about the previous manager coming back, but Middlesbrough are going to be a tough side to break down, as you've already mentioned.
Yeah, look, I mean, up until recently, I think they'd only conceded something like 6 goals, against them. So I think every side's, let alone us, I think every side's found them a difficult team to break down. They've not scored massive amounts of goals, but of course, when you're defensively resolute like that, you don't need to win games, as we've found recently ourselves. But they've also got good players. When you see some of their players, they've been a Premier League side a couple of seasons ago. Not that much longer than ourselves. And Tony's a very, very good manager. So it brings a difficult problem. I don't think they're just going to come and defend, of course. They will come and try and be physical with us. They'll try and bring their own attacking game on Saturday. So we've got to try and match that physicality and that endeavour, and we've also got to try and use our own philosophy to cause them problems, you know. So, but it's going to be a difficult game, like any time that you play a good team like Middlesbrough.
And in the last game, Tom Edwards was outstanding, which you mentioned at the time. He's obviously put in a good shift and may want to keep his shirt.
Yeah, look, I think of course he'll want to keep his shirt. You know, any player plays and plays well, they want to play the next game, particularly when you've won the game. But like you say, when you performed really, really well. Got a difficult decision coming up because Cuco Martin, I thought, performed really well in the period before that. You know, he was brave enough to hold his hand and say he didn't feel like he was quite 100% for Bristol, which I think is the right thing to do for the team. But by being honest, you know, he loses his place. But I think what I would say is it's a good position for me to be in. You know, I've got two players chomping at the bit to play, two players that both perform well. And whoever I select, I'll have massive confidence in doing the job out there. But certainly Tom performed well, and I spoke about him before. I think he's got terrific potential.
And on to injuries, how is Sam Clifford doing at the moment?
Sam's fine. Yeah, Sam's fine. We've got a few other little niggles of which I'll know probably more about last minute tomorrow. So we've got a couple of players that could be doubtful for the weekend's game. But Sam's been fine. Sam's trained really well this week. He trained a little bit towards the back end of last week. I think the big decision really will be pretty simple. Do we thrust him back into action without a massive volume of training, without any real match play, or do we, or are we slightly more patient with him in order to just let him build that resilience? Of course, he'll want to play, he'll want to be involved, he'll be chomping at the bit. You know, and he's looked really good in training, I think. Shows what a quality player he is. But of course, what we don't want is, we certainly don't want to get him back in too quickly and then him miss a load more period of time out. So when he comes back in, if that's this weekend or the following weekend or the one after that, we want to make sure he's fit to go for the rest of the season, and that's going to be an important decision for us.
Any update on Manjuth and Peter Etterberg?
Peter's trained for the last couple of days. Mam hasn't trained for the last couple of days. Mam might be okay to train Friday. Again, nothing too serious, but when he's had 2 hamstring injuries quite recently, again, I'll have a decision to make. You know, do we want to risk him injuring that further? Because of course that wouldn't be good. So we've got a few like that. Of course, as a manager, you want everyone to train all week, and then it's very, very easy in terms of who's available and who's fit. But the reality of the Championship and football is that sometimes you have to nurse 1 or 2 players through the week. Sometimes they make the game, sometimes they don't, and that's a decision that's always based on what's best for the team, not the individual. We'll always try to make that decision.
And the crowd might be affected by bonfire weekend, by the game being live on Sky, but it would be obviously great if we could get 3 points. But the fans are really important this weekend, aren't they? And there may be a situation where there's a little bit of, we are the next manager back. You know what that's like, going to a former club, and he'll want to do well here. He normally does actually do well.
Yeah, listen, Tony. I mean, I think, you know, I would imagine Tony would get a decent response from the fans, because he's you know, he's been a massive part of this club, and a really successful part of this club. So rightly so. You know, he's always been very good to me whenever I've come across him and played against him. But alternatively, you know how hard his sides are to play against. It doesn't surprise me. He's had good results here since leaving. I know myself that you're always keen to go back to your old clubs and get one over on them a little bit, just because, you know, that's the nature of the competitive side of any manager. And like you say, the fans have played a massive part. I would imagine that the whole atmosphere of this weekend, because it's our sort of remembrance game. Tony coming back, you know, I appreciate what you're saying about the weekend that it is, and the fact that it's a little bit later kickoff. But whatever amount of fans we get there, they've shown that, you know, they'll make a lot of noise and they'll get behind the team. And once more, we've got to try and give them a performance that makes them stay behind the team. You know, so certainly something we want to improve is our home results. I don't think in overall we've played really, really poorly at home. I just think we've made poor mistakes in games that have then dictated how the game's perceived or how the result ends up, you know. And what we've got to do is we've got to put in a much better performance for much longer periods in order to get the result we all want.
And the last one from me, the last game, you had Moritz Bauer, Peter Crouch and Ryan Shawcross continue with that? Are you going to have all 6 or 7 people standing there next time?
Probably not. At one point, we one of the coaches joked that Charlie, get ready, you might be coming back on again. So no, I think it was we were putting Moritz on the right side to shore up that right side. We just felt Ince had run out of a bit of legs, and if you remember at that point that Bristol had got a corner, and then they proceeded to put 3 corners in the box and look dangerous, and by that time you felt as though maybe it was going to be a set piece. So at first we were going to go for Crouchy, then we felt as though we might as well put Ryan on. I didn't really want to do that at that point because I felt that would just encourage even more pressure to put an extra defender on and not an attacking player. But at that point I think the clock had got to about 85, 86 minutes, and we just felt at that point as though we want to get another defender on the pitch, and we managed to see it out. But yeah, I think that such was the weather down there that you didn't really want to be stood on the sideline with just shorts and a t-shirt on for too long. So apologies to those two.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You faced Tony Pulis as a manager a couple of times, once with Birmingham and once with Derby, if I remember rightly,
Yep.
last season. And it's a tough side to beat. What can you do to break down a Tony Pulis side when he's coming here to get a result against one of his old clubs?
Well, I think there's two. I mean, in my opinion, there's 2 ways of doing it. There's one is you either try to be very, very forceful, and you try to perhaps go away from your philosophy and just try and force pressure on them in the right areas, but they're very good at defending that. Or you have to be a little bit patient, and that's the thing, you know. So I think it's one of those games where, you know, the fans might have to be patient with the players as well, because what you don't want to do is you can't, you know, if you want to be. If you want to build play up, and if you want to try and keep probing against a side like that, you have to accept that if they limit space, it's going to be very hard to find that space as well as you like all the time. So there's times when you have to keep the ball, there's times when you have to keep moving the ball, there's times when you're going to have to work very hard to open spaces up. And you also have to be aware that Middlesbrough also can attack very, very well. You know, I don't think for any stretch of the imagination they're just going to come here and sit in and defend for the whole game. You know, they're very good when they attack also. They've got some very powerful players, some very good players. But you know that at some point you're going to have to try to break them down. So we'll look at different ways of doing that. We've worked all week on different ways of doing that. But it's probably the hardest part of the game, and we've seen it. You know, we've got 3 very good away results ourselves by, at some period of the game, dropping in very deep and making it very, very difficult for the opposition to play through you. So as we know, if any team does that against you, you've got to find a very good solution, and that's where you want your attacking players to come up with a little bit of magic in the final third, you know. So that's going to be on them. It's quite difficult to give that to the players sometimes. I think most coaches and most managers will say the same, that a lot of your philosophy is to try and get those players to the final third. And when you're in the final third, that's when they've got to earn their money. You know, they've got to come up with a little bit of magic, and we'll try and give them that freedom to do that. And then we want to see that ability come out.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.